Emisiune realizată cu sprijinul Camerei de Comerț și Industrie a României.
Bună seara, stimați telespectatori, bună seara încă o dată. Bună seara la o nouă ediție Ambasador România cu un invitat special. Mă bucur că a acceptat invitația mea și sunt convins că și dumneavoastră mi se va părea interesant. Înainte de a-l prezenta, voi face acea paranteză de la începutul fiecare emisiuni și am să vă spun că în acest moment se duce o bătălie pentru România cum nu a mai existat niciodată. Există o bătălie dusă cu mijloace și de către forțe interne și externe. Este o bătălie pentru ocuparea acestui teritoriu pe care dumneavoastră o vedeți poate prea puțin. Undeva în spatele televizoarelor există o luptă fără precedent, există o criză de securitate fără precedent și atât cât depinde de noi, vom face tot ce ține de fiecare cetățean, de fiecare organizație, de fiecare jurnalist, așa cum consideră să-și facă datoria, să nu permită confiscarea acestei țări de o gașcă internă cu interese externe. Acestea fiind zise, dar haideți să mai spun un lucru. Data viitoare când Curtea Constituțională a României va judeca o cauză, poate că vor avea grijă ca în acea curte să nu fie persoane care s-au antepronunțat cu privire la cauza pe care o judec. Există judecători, membri ai curții, care au făcut-o deja. Din păcate, acești oameni fac și au făcut jocul unor țări și unor persoane care au interese directe de destabilizare a României. Am spus aceste lucruri pentru că țin totuși de politica externă, de securitatea României, dar mă întorc la invitatul meu. Invitatul meu este un invitat special din mai multe puncte de vedere. Se află în România cu un motiv aparte, o să rog pe dânsul să ne spună de ce a venit în România, dar are o biografie extrem de interesantă. A fost în armata israeliană, a participat la misiuni de aducere a cetățenilor evrei din diverse state, a participat la misiuni alături de fostul ministru al apărării în războiul de la Yom Kippur. Este un om cu o vastă experiență diplomatică pentru că a fost reprezentantul statului Israel în Federația Rusă cu ceva timp în urmă și, sigur, pe parcurs vom mai descoperi destule despre dânsul. Jonathan Davis este numele dânsului, este vicepreședinte astăzi pentru relații internaționale la IDC în Israel și un om cu un bagaj extrem de complex despre regiune, despre Europa, despre securitate. Mr. Davis, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I made a little bit longer presentation for you. I mentioned to our viewers that you are quite an interesting character. I mean, if I look to your biography, I don't know where to put my finger first, you know? But as any other normal talk show starting, it's normal to start with asking normal questions and then to put you in the difficulty. Why are you here?
I'm here actually to attend a very, very important graduation ceremony of the Lauder School here in Bucharest, which is an esteemed and prestigious school, which has been under the Lauder Foundation until of recent times, and is run by Tova Binun, who is a very, very good friend and colleague. And I'm honored to be actually at this event where the Lauder School becomes independent and goes off on its own. So it's been nurtured and it's been raised, and now it's reaching adulthood, And I know that it's a very, very good school because a number of the graduates of that school have actually attended my university in Israel, and in every single case, they were outstanding students.
Well, I'm very happy you mentioned the event because I also appreciate very much the work that Tova did in Romania and the performance that the kids graduating this school have, not only in you, of course, so you're speaking about your university, but anywhere in the world.
You're right.
They're not only going to Israel, they're going everywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
And the performance is speaking for itself. Now, because I have you here, I will start shooting with questions that are interesting for our viewers. Let me ask you first, how was to be the representative of your prime minister in the Soviet Union? What are the experiences that you would feel that the Romanians would need or find interesting to tell? And how is now Russia comparing with the Soviet Union you have seen from the position of, let's say, the representative, the high representative of your prime minister there?
Well, Alex, that's a great question. I had a very, very challenging time in 1978 when I went on a vacation to the former Soviet Union for a month. And I visited Leningrad and Moscow and Tashkent and Bukhara and Samarkand. And my mission was to meet Jews in the former Soviet Union who were very interested in Israel and in coming to Israel. So in Leningrad, I had the opportunity of leading the Passover feast with 90 people in a 50 square meter apartment. And one of the people in that apartment, who was a youngster at the time, later became a member of parliament in Israel. He's the late Yuri Stern, and he remembered for years that he used to say, "You were the first paratrooper I ever met, and I met you in Leningrad." Okay? And we were in Moscow, and it was interesting to meet Jewish people around that time because the former Soviet Union was quite communist, and because we really didn't have the freedom to travel around the way we would want to travel around. And so we went as tourists, and a lot of the work that we did basically was to, I would say, encourage Jewish people who wanted to immigrate to Israel at the time. And it was before Glasnost.
Of course.
And it was way before that time. And I have a feeling that the KGB let us be. In other words, if we behaved ourselves, they behaved themselves. And the most important thing was basically the message to these Jewish people.
But was it a vacation or you had the mission from the Prime Minister?
Well,
because I noticed your remark. I didn't say anything, but now I'm. Then you said mission. So it was a mission or it was a vacation?
That's a good question, Alex. You ask some very good questions, I must say.
Thank you.
During the day, we were taken around by travel agents working for this organization called Inturist. Inturist. And so they took us to see some really nice places. They took us to see the Kremlin. They took us to see GUM, where we saw a lot of socks being sold, or a lot of underwear being sold, but not necessarily pants or shirts, because that week they didn't have those things. Okay, and so it was very, very interesting to see this country and to see the beautiful sights of the country. But at night, we went to visit Jewish people.
But with the approval of the Russian authorities?
We didn't actually ask them.
No?
We knew of some very nice people who lived in certain places, and we went to visit them.
And when you went back to the Prime Minister, what did you tell him?
Well, when we went back to Israel, we reported to Israel that there are Jewish people all over the former Soviet Union who are thinking of immigrating to Israel. And I can say 1.4 million Jews later, I'm glad we did it, because 1.4 million Jews immigrated from the former Soviet Union to Israel over the years.
1.4 million?
1.4 million, a huge percentage of Israel.
In how much time? In 10 years?
In a period of time of a number of decades. A number of decades, but there was a massive amount of immigration that came in the early 1970s, but the massive one came in the 1990s, right after Glasnost, when the doors were opened.
Yes.
And Israel welcomed so many fantastic medical doctors and dentists and engineers and technicians and individuals who later became high-tech leaders in Israel, and sports persons, and people who teach opera, and people who teach dancing and teach ballet, and some of the finest intelligentsia of the state of Israel over the last decades came from the former Soviet Union and helped make Israel what it is today.
You told me something before starting our talk show, and I'd like to ask you now, how do you perceive as an expert in this, let's say, in this area, how do you perceive the contribution of the Romanians which went to Israel?
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of Romanian Jews in Israel. It's like one of the largest groups of any European country in the state of Israel. Maybe second only to the former Soviet Union, by the way. And those Romanian Jews have been immigrating to Israel from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and they brought a tremendous culture to Israel. Teachers, leaders, people who became lawyers, academics, people who became politicians, famous journalists, famous actors and actresses in Israel. Romanians. And they came to Israel and they studied Hebrew, and they frequently spoke with a Romanian Hebrew accent, but they maintained many of the Romanian culture. We had a newspaper in Israel which was printed in Romanian. We used to broadcast the news in Israel in Romanian as well. And this group, which moved to Israel, they became part of the backbone of the state of Israel, part of the backbone of the state of Israel. What makes Israel great is that Israel is a country which is a melting pot of immigrants who came from more than 150 different countries around the world. And in each one, with their own national character, made their own special contribution to the state of Israel.
Well, that's good to know for the Romanian people that our Romanians really made a big contribution to your state.
Huge contribution.
We appreciate very much these kind words. Now, you are a military as well, and I mean, before going to the Middle East and talking more about it, I want to ask you: are you happy you came back from the war? I mean,
it's Alex. I have to tell you, it's always fun to come back, so that I can be on your show.
Yes.
Look, I mean, there were some missions, like in the Yom Kippur War, when we were on the Iraqi-Syrian border.
Exactly.
In behind-the-lines operations. The beginning of the Yom Kippur War didn't go so well for Israel.
No.
We were kind of surprised, and we had to have a whole lessons learned afterwards. But during that war, those of us who fought in the war as paratroopers, and my commander during that war was at the time Captain Shaul Mofaz, who later became the Chief of Staff of the State of Israel, later also the Minister of Defense, and happens to be my neighbor in a nice little village called Kochav Yair, where I live.
Okay.
And actually, it was very, very challenging to come back from that specific one, because we literally had to be taken out from about 200 kilometers from the Israeli border, the southeast of Damascus, towards the Iraqi-Syrian border after this mission. And we actually got out of that one by the skin of our teeth, I would say. So it was nice to get out. But we're here, and we're here because the commander, Shaul Mofaz, was cool, calm, and collected. And because the helicopter pilot of the Sikorsky, which rescued us on that very early in the morning, right before daylight, was also cool, calm, and collected. And because these individuals knew what they were doing. And they did it efficiently, and they did it courageously. And so here I am to talk about it. In fact, from that specific mission, we just had a reunion at the home of former Minister of Defense Mofaz, and everybody came with their children and grandchildren and sat on the grass, and we listened to the 75-year-old pilot speak about the rescue, and we listened to Shaul Mofaz, who's my age, also speak about it, and it was a lot of fun for the wives and for the children and for the grandchildren to actually see where their grandparents were many years ago.
Well, it is also interesting to know where you were and what you did and what your minister did. And these are things that are interesting for the people because, of course, you are telling that this now like a story. But in fact, this is not something pleasant because such things, the war is not something pleasant. And your country is, as I say, usually permanently in a war. You are in an area where you have all the neighbors almost not nice to you, if I may say so. And I want to ask you more questions about this because the Romanians consider, or maybe the Europeans, I think, not only the Romanians, consider that peace is something that they deserve. You know, it's something that is there. Well, anytime peace cannot be there. And we have Ukraine, we have Syria, we have Iraq, we have North Africa, we have, so many places where we have conflicts and people die. So my question to you is, Jonathan, why is so much conflict in the Middle East? Because explanations are so various from one ambassador to another. You are not an ambassador. You can be more blunt. Why so much conflict now there, with Israel or between the other countries, no matter who they are? I will have questions on the ongoing, but I don't want to confuse you because I want to know your view about ISIS. I want to see your view about how do the regional actors play in this, Turkey, Iran. But let's start with this. Why is now, now always, but now especially Israel, it's such a target for all these Arab countries? How do you manage this?
Well, first of all, the Arab-Israel conflict is over 100 years old.
Yes.
It's almost since time immemorial. It's almost biblical, okay? But actually, when I take a look at the Middle East right now, and I look at the Arab-Israel conflict, it seems dwarfed. It seems minute. It exists, but compared to the other things happening in the Middle East right now, it seems to be not the main headlines. It seems to be not the main show. It seems to be a sideshow. It seems to be a footnote. And I think it's a very, very challenging thing because the people of Israel really want peace. And many of the people who live in Israel came from Europe, who settled Israel, or came from the Middle East, Middle Eastern countries. And the Jews who came to Israel from Europe saw what can happen when you have war in Europe. There was a war called World War I and World War II.
Of course.
And there were countries that didn't speak to each other, but we saw, actually, at the end of it, that those countries ended up speaking with each other. And they ended up establishing the European Union. And they ended up being able to travel from one place to the next. We saw in Northern Ireland and
of course,
and so on. So we strive for this. It's difficult for all kinds of reasons to make peace. I think peace demands.
What are the reasons, John?
I think it demands courage, okay, to make peace. I think that if we had some leaders on the Palestinian side who were willing to sit down and take a chance, okay, and say, okay, let's sit down with you, let's just talk. Let's just talk.
It's only about the Palestinians, or it's about people which are behind them?
I think it's about the Palestinians, and I think it's a fear on the part of Palestinian leadership to be the one leader who will take that chance and sit down with Israel. Maybe they're afraid of being murdered, like Anwar Sadat was murdered.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly.
Or maybe they're afraid of something else. I would love to see talks taking place. We've had prime minister in Israel who really wanted to sit down and talk. Prime Minister Ehud Barak, for example, who's a very wise person. He's done a few things in his life. He sat down with Yasser Arafat.
From where do they get the guns and the weapons and the money?
From where do the Palestinians get the weapons and the guns and the money? Well, many of them got it from other Arab countries.
This is what I'm asking.
From other Arab countries, who today, by the way, want to be friends with Israel. Because many of those Muslim countries now.
Like Egypt or Jordan?
Well,
Jordan
Egypt and Jordan have diplomatic relations with Israel. And I would have to say that the leaders of Egypt and Jordan collaborate and cooperate with Israel for all kinds of reasons, including economic and security ones. And that peace, which we made with Egypt and which we made with Jordan, is a peace which continues to hold, which gives me hope that if the Palestinians were willing to sit down the way the leaders of Egypt and Jordan sat down, maybe one day we could make peace. Maybe we could. But there are factions within the Palestinian movement. We have a place which I call Hamastan. It used to be called Gaza. I call it Hamastan. Just like I call Lebanon Hezbollastan, okay? Because these different organizations have taken over and they are the tone of what takes place in these different areas. If I take a look at the Hamas, they have 6,000 projectiles which they can fire into Israel. Just this morning a projectile like this was fired into Israel. And so the Hamas don't necessarily agree with the Fatah.
Of course. They are fighting each other.
There are different factions there. And then I take a look at other parts of the Middle East and I see what's happening in Syria. And I see ISIS, and I see Jabhat al-Nusra, and I see Al-Qaeda, and I see the Druze, and I see the Kurds, and I see the pro-Assad faction, and I see the rebels who are against Assad. I've just mentioned 7 different factions.
Absolutely.
Who are hanging out there.
It's a total mess, but we'll continue to talk about this after a short break of commercials. And let's not forget why you are in Romania, Jonathan, because my colleague Adriana will present in the next 15 minutes, let's say, the event for which you are here. Of course, I kidnapped you and put you these very serious questions, but it's another serious thing is happening. This event of Lauder, which is absolutely important for Romanians, and she will be the one to present to the people, to the Romanians, what is the Lauder School, what is happening now, why this event is so important, who are the people which are there, and I think it will be very interesting for the people to see, for the Romanians. So after the commercials, she will be taking the control, and then we come back for discussing about Middle East and other issues. Îi dau legătura Adrianei. Publicitate.